The reason why I didn't jump right up to a stage 2 tune is because I wanted to make sure that the modifications that I'm doing on my car, I actually notice it. Because if I do a bunch of modifications all at once and I end up not liking it, then I have to troubleshoot through each single modification to figure out what I want to keep and what I want to take out. And I'm following that same process with the Catless Downpipe. I want to see what the changes are with the downpipe before doing the stage 2 tune. It'll also help me modify that stage 2 tune later on as well, because I'll know what's actually coming from the tune. There's really only two things that I'll say that are cons with the Catless Downpipe. One is going to be sound. If you work in an area, or if you live in an area where you really want to be discreet and you don't want to draw too much attention, or you start work very early and you don't want to wake up your neighbors, this is going to increase a little bit of sound. Now, if this does apply to you, the good thing about having boot mode 3 is that you can actually adjust the exhaust flaps during your cold start. So if you are in an area where you don't want to draw too much attention when you first start up your car, you can either adjust the exhaust flaps or keep the exhaust flaps as they are, because your car will start in comfort mode where the exhaust flaps aren't completely open. So there is some adjustments that you can make when it comes to having that. Now, as far as the actual sound, as far as measuring it in decibels, I don't know. But if I were to rate it, and if I'm going to say that the normal startup sound is at a 5, the Catless Downpipe probably brings it to a 7 in my opinion. The second thing that I would say is the smell. The smell is something that you can definitely notice, especially if you let the car warm up for a while in the morning. And every time you get to a stoplight, if you can get through the cold start portion of it, and if all you're worried about is just the stoplight portion of it or stop and go traffic, this is where the M235i really shines. And most BMWs actually have the auto start function, meaning that every time you come to a light, you're able to kill the engine. And then as soon as you press down on the clutch or you release on the brake, depending on if you have a manual transmission or not, the car will start back up. And then once you get going, the smell is virtually eliminated. If you can smell it from the cabin when you're actually moving, I would say double check your clamps to make sure that you sealed everything up correctly, because you should not smell it as you're moving. But if you're very, very, very sensitive to smell, then I would say don't do this modification. If you can put up with the smell just that one time in the morning, or just that one time after you get off of work to start up the car, then it's gonna be perfectly fine. And you don't need the car perfectly warmed up, because you no longer have to worry about warming up the cats before hard acceleration. You really just want to make sure that the oil is properly circulating in the car before making the engine really, really work. Rather than letting it warm up for, say, 1 to 2 minutes, you could probably just let it warm up for 30 seconds to a minute. And I'm not saying to, gas it after a minute or so, but you can start driving under normal conditions. Still kind of babying the car until it fully warms up before you really go under acceleration. I consider myself as somebody who is pretty sensitive to smell, but I can deal with it. So maybe that puts things in perspective for you. It is annoying, especially at a traffic light if your engine doesn't turn off. If I'm at a traffic light that I know typically takes a long time to turn, I will turn off my engine. Same thing if I am at a gas station and I'm waiting for my turn. I will turn off my engine, that way the smell doesn't get to me too much. If you guys saw the previous review that I did with the BM3 Stage 1 tune, you'll notice that I said that there is a bit of turbo lag in the Sport and Sport Plus mode. That is actually remedied with this modification. And that really leads to what I was thinking in the original review of BM3 Stage 1, is that it doesn't necessarily cause turbo lag. So it's not that there's air that is bottlenecked at the intercooler, or that the turbo is spooling so much more air, but really that airflow is getting stuck at the catalytic converter, and then once it passes through, it has better laminar flow in order for you to propel the car forward. So it was kind of like a pseudo turbo lag with the OEM downpipe in there. It wasn't like a true turbo lag. The other thing that you'll notice right away is when you're accelerating, typically you have to increase the pressure when your foot is on the gas. Say like leading up to the 3,000, 4,000, and then after that you gotta apply more pressure there. That you don't really have to do anymore because the car just goes. That restriction point is gone. So the car really climbs in the upper RPM levels a whole lot easier. And if you accelerate your car as you did before, you're gonna find that you're at the higher speeds a whole lot faster. And you don't even feel it. It's just because the restriction point is gone. And so even on the gas pedal, the restriction is lessened as well. When I was driving over to the Cars and Coffee, the check engine light, it didn't turn on. But when I left, and probably for like a block or two, that's when I noticed that the check engine light turned on. So it did take a little bit of time for it to turn on. The good thing that I'll note here is that even though the check engine light turned on, I can still use the Sport and Sport Plus mode. There have been some reviews on the forums that I've seen that say when the check engine light turns on, you can only do Comfort and Eco Plus. So if you did the downpipe and you didn't get a tune, say from BM3 or something like that, you can still have Sport and Sport Plus mode, no problem. The other thing that I've been asked is how does the tune as well as the bolt-on modifications affect your gas mileage? And I can't really say how it's affecting the gas mileage just yet. I can do that in more of a longer term review because I am driving the car a little bit harder since the tune. I want to see what it can really do so that way if I ever need to use the car in a specific scenario, I know how to maneuver it. Once I go back to my normal driving habits, I'll be able to comment on that. The last time I went to go fill up at the gas station, I probably had 20 miles per gallon versus 21. I think that has more to do with my more aggressive driving style now that I have the tune versus the actual tune itself. And the last thing that we'll go over in this initial review of the downpipe is sound. So sound has pros and cons. Like I said before, the con, it can be easily remedied through the app because you can adjust the exhaust flaps. And as far as the pro in this case, Sport and Sport Plus mode, so in the more aggressive modes, you get a louder, raspier sound, so a little bit more higher pitched. In regards to Comfort and Eco Pro mode, it's a deeper sound. Before, I would never really want to be in either one of those modes, but I kind of like the deeper sound that I get from the exhaust in those modes. And going around through my neighborhood when I'm coming home or when I'm leaving to go to work, I like that sound. You don't really hear the difference, but you feel the difference from inside the cabin. You actually feel the burbles as they're passing through the tailpipe. So you notice all of that, and it's pretty cool because it's not loud and obnoxious, but it's cool because it's an observable effect, especially if you like it. And for me, all the modifications that I do on my car are strictly meant for me. I don't care if it looks cool. I don't care if other people thinks it sounds cool. If I notice the performance enhancements of the modifications that I'm doing, and if I get a slight cosmetic upgrade in that effect, I think it's pretty cool. And the fact that I notice the burbles from inside the car and people don't, that's actually a plus for me. If I were to make my recommendations as far as what you should do with a downpipe, I really think that because the check engine light does come on, but you can still access all the modes, it's not that big of a deal. Without getting into too much detail about the exhaust system and how it will perform in a stage 2 tune, I would say if you really want the best performance between the downpipe, the resonator, and the exhaust, if you want the best performance, go with the downpipe replacement first. If you want the most sound, do the muffler or exhaust first. You could do something like an axle back exhaust to get a lot louder of a sound. And then do the exhaust or the downpipe, depending on which one you did first. The resonator should be the last thing to go, because the resonator really takes care of that drone sound. And I'm happy to say that even with a Catless downpipe, we don't have any drone. Full freeway speed, there's no drone, it doesn't sound anything too different from before putting in the downpipe. So the exhaust note is still pretty much okay from inside the cabin, even at freeway speeds. You can do these things one at a time. Get the BM3, do the downpipe, tune it to stage 2, see how it goes. And then get the exhaust, see how it goes. And then do the resonator and see how it goes. That way, if you don't like any one of those things, or if you're happy with the modification once you go up into a stage 2, then you stop it right there, you didn't waste any money, and you like what you got. But if you want to continue the upgrade pathway, you can do that, and you know exactly what to change if you have a result that you don't like.